Right. I said that when the squads were released, if Alan Forsyth indeed hasn't been included into the squad, I would make a video looking at the reasons why he should be included and why he shouldn't. Trying to make a balanced, unbiased video. I'll admit myself, it won't be easy because I myself fail to see, even though I can find some reasons as to why he could be left out, I fail to really understand it and get on board with it. Now, let's start with the positives. But before we get, or rather, let's start with the reasons why he shouldn't be in the squad, because we've already discussed the reasons why he shouldn't, why he should. So let's discuss the reasons why he shouldn't first. But before we get into that, if you're looking for the game analysis for the final of the European Hockey Championships, that is coming this week. I can't put a date on it yet or a specific day because I still have 2 exams to go, one of which is today, and I still have to study for the other one. But it's coming this week, so be on the lookout for that. So, if we take a look at the squad, unfortunately, the inclusions of Ollie Payne and Jacob Draper, which I think is completely deserved, they are really taken away by, or the importance of that is really taken away or obscured by Alan Forsyth's absence. Now, I am not saying that the absence of one player is more important than the inclusion of 2 very deserving young players. Absolutely not. Because let's face it, those 2 players, Olipe and Jacob Draper, I think absolutely deserve to go to the Olympics, as does Zach Wallace, who is still young. A lot of these players, for a lot of these players rather, it's a first Olympic tournament and it's absolutely deserved. But if we take a look at the forwards, now let's go through the forwards and see why they have been included and why they should be or could be included ahead of Alan Forsyth. Now, let's start with the obvious, Sam Ward. There's no way you can leave Sam Ward out. Some would say he is the best striker in the GB system. I would disagree with that, respectfully so. I can see that point. I would still say it's Alan Forsyth, but 135 caps, 78 goals. It's over 1 goal every 2 games, which is not a bad record because let's face it, GB hasn't always been the greatest teams and they have had their downs. Some would say more so than they have had ups, but Sam Ward is a mobile forward. He can do a bit of everything, forehand, backhand. There's not really that, there is a preference, of course, but it's not like he really needs to go to his forehand or needs to go to his backhand to really get a good shot off. Plus, he's a drag flicker, so that's obviously something that will come into play. Now, he is a forward, so he can't play in the midfield, or rather, he isn't serviceable enough to play at an international level in the midfield. So Danny Carey hasn't included him for his interchangeability, but Sam Ward he can't keep out. Now, Rupert Chipotle, 87 caps, 14 goals. Now you could say, yes, that's not great, but Rupert Chipotle is one of these players that often fills into the midfield, listed as a forward, but is he really a forward? You could argue yes. But because of the rotation at the Olympics, because of the tiredness of lots of players, he might start on the forward line, but he'll quickly drop back into a midfield position, into a role where he's more important in the distribution, into a leadership role. And I think Rupert Chipotle is definitely deserving of his role. So that's already 2 forwards. And surprisingly, there have been 5 forwards included in the squad. Now, if it was 3 or 4 forwards, one of which would have been Rupert Chipotle, I would have understood perhaps, or I would have been more comprehensive of the fact that Forsyth has been excluded. But there are 5 forwards in the GB squad better than him. I find that hard to believe. Now, next one, Phil Roper. Phil Roper, I guess, is also a deserving inclusion. Much like Sam Ward, he is experienced. He's one of the older guys in the squad. On the forward line, fore and back, and no problem. He's also a drag flicker, so that's definitely important. Perhaps won't start the game. I think Danny Carey will try to avoid having Roper and Ward on at the same time, except obviously if they are behind at the latter stages of the game and they need a goal. Because if Sam Ward isn't on there, there's a penalty corner, and Phil Roper is, that's not a problem. You can put Phil Roper on the penalty corner. Now, obviously, you can also put a guy like Adam Dixon or even maybe Jacob Draper, but I think he will keep him separated, and he wants that drag flicker on the forward line, so Phil Roper, logical choice. And that leaves us with Liam Anzell and Chris Griffiths. Now, Liam Anzell, 54 caps, 17 goals. He only got those first few caps because of Sam Ward's absence, because of his injury a few years back. And he really took the opportunities by the horns. He really grasped the opportunities with both hands. And he was a crucial and vital part of how England and GB played in the absence of Sam Ward. But what he brings to the team is things that Roper, Chipotle, and Griffith also bring. Perhaps he doesn't do it as well. Yes, you could say that he is a good complementary piece. He can fit in, play with anyone. He can play with Ward, with Roper, Griffiths, or Chipotle. He can play as the role of the link-up striker, the striker that is going to link up the play. He can be a finisher. He can be a striker that uses the sidelines or that regularly touches the back line. So he's a good utility forward, and therefore I can see his inclusion. And then we have Chris Griffiths. And Chris Griffiths, 112 caps, 26 goals, 30 years of age. So he's 2 years older than Alan Forsyth. And this is the inclusion I'm struggling with. Now, this is not to take away from Chris Griffiths. He is a good player, absolutely. He deserves to be in the England squad, in the GB squad. But does he deserve to be in the England/GB squad if that squad is limited to 16 players? I would say no. Now, however, I can see the reason why he has been included. Sam Ward plays for all Georgians, as does Chris Griffiths. If you want a team, and I mentioned this in my preview of England, and I will mention this in my preview of GB, Danny Carey wants a team that gets along. Danny Carey wants a team that on the pitch knows exactly how to link up the play, where they are. The players know exactly where the others are, what they tend to do. They know each other inside out. They are great friends on and off the pitch, and will play for each other, will run for each other. I can understand then that he would want his forward line to have two players from the same team. But really, when you have these international tournaments and England/GB play basically on a weekly basis nearly. Now, it's not a weekly basis, of course, but they play so regularly together. Does that really matter then that they play for the same club as well? Those players, Sam Ward, Alan Forsyth, between them have over 300 caps together. I mean, they know each other inside out likely as well, so I can't really see why Chris Griffiths has been included. Now, Alan Forsyth is a reserve, as is Harry Martin. I can completely see Harry Martin as a reserve. He is a very useful player, can play in the midfield, can play in the defence, so if any of the midfielders or defenders drop out, they can put Harry Martin in there. If a second midfielder drops out, or a forward, you put Alan Forsyth there. And then, as I said, Rupert Chipotle can fill into that midfield, maybe even Phil Roper, should that need be. But those are really the only reasons I could see why Alan Forsyth has been excluded. Because let's now go, and this will be somewhat of a rehash of the previous video. Let's now take a look at the reasons why Alan Forsyth should be included. And let's start with the first one. Alan Forsyth scores goals. He scores goals. He doesn't usually take penalty corners, but he scores goals, and a lot of them from open play. His play varies. He uses the back line a lot, and he's extremely skillful. Uses the back line probably better than anyone does. Likes making those runs in deep. Has a quick turn and a good shot, obviously. Doesn't take penalty corners, so obviously, as I said, the inclusion of Sam Ward and Roper are important in that regard. But you have to take that into account as well. 101 goals in 189 caps without penalty corners. That's insane. That is insane for a nation that doesn't dominate like the Netherlands does, that doesn't dominate like Australia or Germany does. And those are really, really good numbers. Secondly, the 5 seasons before this one, obviously this one was cut short because of something that I'm not going to say the name of because I don't want YouTube to take my video down. The 5 seasons before that, he was a 20+ goal scorer every single time. He has been the most consistent in England, of course. He's been the most consistent striker in the English league. Now, yes, the argument that the English league isn't as good as European leagues is really negated because everyone plays in the English league in that squad, of course, except now with the transfers of Forsyth going to HGC, Roper, and the Ames going to Oranje Rood. Draper, Creed going to Beerschot. Players are moving out of the English leagues, and that's good for the development of the players, not necessarily good for the English league itself. But that's a whole other video. But the fact that Forsyth has been the best striker in England for the last 5 years, that there's no going around that fact. I don't know. I can't see how that isn't looked at, and that Danny Carey and Zach Jones and Quan Brown decide, yep, he's our first name on the squad. Now, there has been a debate that Danny Carey wants mostly English players simply because he coaches the England team, knows exactly what those players do, how they play, what can be expected of them. And I can understand a part of that. Obviously, England had good European Championships, finished 4th, beat Belgium on the way. And I can see that they want to keep that system. They want to keep the squad relatively similar. But that still is a system that did not lead to medals. Yes, they made it to the semi-finals. But let's face it, if they had Forsyth, Chipotle, and Draper in that squad against Germany in the semi-finals, do they win that game? I argue they probably do. Now, yes, Germany didn't play their best game then, but that is going to happen. You are going to face teams that don't play their best game. Sometimes you won't play your best game. If you put Forsyth and Chipotle in that England squad at the European Championships, I think they win against Germany, and then in the final, all bets are off. So, yes, England had a good tournament. Yes, it's a system that has improved England, but still, it's a system that hasn't resulted in medals yet. And how do you win medals? With better players. And in this instance, the best player, in my opinion, and you might disagree, and that's perfectly fine, the best player is Alan Forsyth. And despite of the system, or regardless rather of the system you want to play, if you believe that he doesn't fit that system, if you believe that his play is too rogue, or his play is too he goes with the flow too much, shall I say, he's too he's not a system player, if that's what you believe, then you find a way to include him. You find a way to include your best player. And if that means that when he's on the pitch, the system goes out the window slightly, or that you play the system with 10 players and you give him carte blanche, then you give him carte blanche, because that's how Alan Forsyth plays, because that's how Alan Forsyth scores goals, and that's how Alan Forsyth wins you games. Now, between now and the start of the Olympics, it's very possible that an injury happens, especially with training camp. I don't wish it on any player. Obviously, the squad has been announced. I don't want any player to miss out on the Olympics because of an injury. That would absolutely suck. And I really don't want any player to get injured. But if a player gets injured, Alan Forsyth makes it into that squad. And although I do want to see Alan Forsyth, I don't want to see him at the Olympics now because, as I said, I don't want to see an injury. Now, does that change what I expect from GB at the Olympics? In a tough group, yes. In 2016, Alan Forsyth got excluded as well. I made that point as well. GB 5 games in 2016, 14 goals, 9 of which against Brazil. Finished 5th in their group. Didn't make it through to the next round. They needed scoring. It was a terrible tournament for GB. They needed a guy like Alan Forsyth. He was excluded then. He's still excluded now. Will history repeat itself? I don't know. But I am not predicting GB to go all the way. I'm not predicting them to reach the semi-finals either, unfortunately. I do think they will make it to the next round, but I'll leave it at that because I still have previews to make, obviously, and I want you to watch them. So, I've tried to look at this situation from the point of view of Danny Carey. I've tried to look at this situation from my point of view and the point of view that many other people share, that he should make it into the squad. I'm not the coach. I'm not going to change anything. Oh, I can't change anything, rather. So, yeah, I don't know how to end this video. So I think I've made all the points that I want to say. There's probably more points that come into my mind. I'm not going to go into the debate points of the 1 million of the 18 million going to Scotland and the rest going to England. I'm not going to go into the debate points of biased or against saying that, oh, he's Forsyth plays for a nation that isn't as good as England or isn't a tier 1 nation and therefore shouldn't be in the squad. I'm not going to go into that debate because it's ridiculous. It doesn't matter who he plays for. If he's eligible, he's good enough. So that's it for this video. I know the end was I drifted away towards the end, but that's the end of this video. If you've enjoyed it, please like the video. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in a few days for the game analysis of the Netherlands versus Germany. Take care.